Hello, I'm Mrs. Jansen, and today in our art, we'll be creating an optical illusion together. Let's get started with vocabulary. Optical is a word that is used to describe how our eyes see things. Op art or optical art is a style of visual art that shows optical illusions. Artists often use lines, shapes, colors, and patterns in special ways to create the illusion of movement and rhythm in their artwork. Let's look at Bridget Riley's art. If you look at the top left, you may be making a connection with a checkerboard. Let's see how this artist created the illusion of movement. At the left, this artist starts with black and white squares, and as your eye looks to the right, you'll notice how those squares gradually change to rectangles. Continue looking to the right and notice how those rectangles become narrower and gradually change to vertical lines. The vertical lines are the area where we see the fold. Now to the right of that fold, notice how the vertical lines gradually become wider and change again to rectangles. Those rectangles continue to get wider until you're all the way to the right and you see the squares of the checkerboard again. Let's look at the image on the top right. You may be making a connection with a waterfall. I'd like you to notice how this artist used different wavy lines and different colors to create this illusion. Now let's look at the image on the bottom left. I'd like you to think of this as concentric circles, circles that share the same center. Now let's look at the outermost circle together, and I'd like you to notice that you see diagonal lines with spaces in between. I'd like you to notice as your eye follows around that circle how the diagonal line changes. It gets narrower and the space in between gets smaller. This artist repeats the pattern. Every circle, the diagonal line changes. It changes in direction. It starts the opposite way of the circle before it, and the diagonal line changes in width, and the space in between changes in width. It becomes narrower as you go around. Notice how every circle, the diagonal lines start out smaller, and inside that circle, it changes to smaller diagonal lines than it started, and the space in between changes. The artist repeats the pattern on every circle, but starts with the diagonal lines in the opposite direction of the circle before it. I'd like you to notice as you get closest to that center circle how small the diagonal lines are in the circles around it. And notice how small the spaces are in between those lines. So this is the way that this artist created rhythm and movement in her art. And she's an artist that was born in 1931, and she lives in London, England. Her artwork is in museums throughout the world. The next artist we're going to talk about today is historic artist M.C. Escher. He lived in the past from 1898 to 1972. His artwork is also in museums around the world. So first let's look at his art on the left. This is a drawing, and here you see a hand holding the sphere, and inside the sphere you're seeing a self-portrait of the artist. When you look at this sphere, you can look at it differently. Some people think it reminds them more of a snow globe. And maybe there's the artist inside a snow globe. Other people make connections with a reflection, and they think of the sphere as reflective, more like a mirror. If you think of it as a mirror, I'd like you to notice how the thumbs and the fingers of the artist's hands connect. You see the reflection or the mirror image of the artist, and you also see the room that the artist is sitting in. Now let's look at more of M.C. Escher's artwork. The image on the left shows a lot of different stairways leading in different directions. Some of the stairways end. They don't appear to go anywhere. And notice the illusion that's created with the stairways in different directions. Some of these people appear that they're walking up the side of the building. So we know that that's not possible because of gravity, and that's something you may have learned about in science. But we also know that this artist probably moved around his artwork as he was creating it so that he could draw the stairways and the people in a similar way, or he moved his artwork. Let's look at the image on the right. It looks very realistic, very much like real life. Some people look at this and think it's an actual hand drawing another hand, but they're both drawings. So M.C. Escher was born in Holland, and he went to college to study architecture. Architecture is a form of art, and it's making plans for buildings. He decided to study graphic art instead. So let's use our eyes to see an optical illusion. If you look at a color for a few seconds and then look at an empty space, you can sometimes see the opposite of that color on the color wheel. So let's look at this purple smile face, and we're going to count to say 7 together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now shift your eyes to that empty white space and notice the color you see. Some of you are seeing yellow. There may be others in our group that see something different, and remember, that's okay because we all see things differently. So when we were talking about the colors that we would see, we said that if you looked at one color, you sometimes see the opposite of that color on the color wheel. So let's look at the color wheel together and notice that the opposite of the purple is the yellow. So you can try this again if you'd like to. So now we're going to talk about the art that we're going to create today. And our art is influenced by this work of art on the left. And I also like to remind you of warm and cool colors. You'll be making choices in your art as you add color later, And I'd like you to be thinking of the warm and cool colors as you do. So remember, the warm colors remind you of warm things. Maybe the sunset or different flowers. The cool colors can remind you of cool things. Maybe you're thinking of the blue sky or water, green grass, or purple flowers. So now let's get started. You'll see my screen change so that we can draw together. And I'd like you to have your paper and pencil ready. You'll need your crayons for later. So today we're going to start with our paper in landscape style. That means our paper is horizontal or across. And we're going to draw wavy lines from the top of the paper to the bottom. So as we draw these wavy lines, remember we're all going to draw them a little differently. I'm going to start the first wavy line about 4 finger spaces over. And I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to have this curved line go out and then go in and then go out again. And I'm going to draw it all the way to the bottom. Now I'm going to start the next line, and it's going to be another curved line, but I'm going to draw this a little differently. I'm going to start at the top and go out, and I'm going to stay closer to the first curved line that I drew. I'm going to add a similar curve, and then I'm going to go out, and then I'm going to add it closer at the bottom. Remember, everyone's can look different. We all make art differently, so no one's is going to look exactly the same. So let's make a third wavy line. Remember to have spaces in between. This time I'm going to go back and have at least 3 finger spaces away. I'm going to start this curved line a little different. I'm going to have it curve out, then in, then out again. And I think I'm going to have it go in and out a couple of times before I go to the bottom of the paper. Right now, about 3 finger spaces away, I'm going to start the next curved line. And remember, everyone's can look different. You definitely need to have space in between. And again, I decided that I was going to have a curved line that went in and out in different directions. And now we're going to start at the top. This time it's going to be closer together. I think I'm just going to have this one 2 finger spaces away. And I'm going to draw this curved line differently. And then when I get to this space, I think I'm going to leave it just like this. So it depends on how wide your space is. If your space is really large, you might want to add another wavy line. Make sure you always have space in between. So now that we've got our wavy lines all drawn, the next thing we're going to do is add different curved lines to create rhythm and movement. So we're going to consider these now sections. So let's count how many sections we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And depending on how many curved lines you drew, you may have more sections or you might have less. So let's go to our first section, and we're going to start at the edge of the paper, and we're going to add curved lines like a smile. We need to remember that we always draw from the edge of the paper on this first section to touch the vertical wavy line that we drew. I also know that I'm going to add color to this later, so I want to keep my lines at least one or more finger space away. And I'm going to continue adding more curved lines like a smile. Always remember that they need to touch that vertical wavy line. So as you're drawing curved lines like a smile, you're remembering at least one or more finger spaces away. Even though it's the same type of curved line, it doesn't have to look exactly the same. It stays a curved line like a smile, but it can look differently than the one above it. So as we work, you'll see more of the illusion as we add curved lines. So let's go to the second section, and we're going to add lines in the opposite direction. So instead of curved like a smile, these will be curved like a rainbow. Now, one thing that you need to remember is the lines do not have to meet, but when I start, I like to start at a line, and I'm going to add the curved lines like a rainbow, and I'm going to go to every line first. Remember, at least a finger space or more away. Always remember to touch that curved line. And remember, even though they're all the same type of curved line, curves like a rainbow, they can look different than each other. So now I'm going to look at the spaces between the lines, and I used the line to the left as my first guide. But now when I look at this space, it looks much larger, and I think I'd rather add another curved line inside. Now I'm going to go to the third section, or we're going to go to the third section. And remember, we need to change the curved line to the opposite. So this third section has curved lines like a smile. Remember to touch that next vertical wavy line, and every curved line that you draw should be at least a finger space away so you have room for color. Remember, everyone's artwork is going to look different. That's one of the best things about art. So as we make these curved lines like smiles, remember, they don't all have to look exactly the same. They can look different. Now I'm going to look at this space again, and I'm going to decide if there's any other lines I'd like to add. I think I'm going to go back and add another curved line like a smile at the top. Now you're starting to see that movement. So now we're in the fourth section, and we're going to add curved lines in the opposite direction again. These are going to be curved like a rainbow. So go ahead, add your curved lines, and make sure that you have a space in between and you're leaving room enough that you could color. And after you've filled that whole section with curved lines like a rainbow, let's start the next section with curved lines in the opposite direction like a smile. And remember, as you draw, you're the one who decides how far apart your curved lines are. They don't have to meet the curved lines in the section before it, and they can change. They can look different, even though they're the same curved line, like a smile. So same type of curved line, but it can be drawn a little differently. And now we're in the last section. Some of you might have more sections, and that's okay, but you want to remember that you have to fill the whole page. So in this last section, we're going to add curved lines like rainbows. Make sure you always remember to touch the curved line and then go off the page. So now we have a lot of rhythm and movement in our art. And the next thing that you're going to do is think about color. You're going to see the screen change again so that we can look at the example. So you're going to notice in this example on the left that this artist used many warm and cool colors. So you get to decide the color combinations that you'd like to use. And think about moving your crayon in that curved direction to make them appear more rounded. So you're moving your crayon in the same direction as the curved line within the section. So for example, you're going to notice that the curved line changes value. Notice how you see darks and lights. I hope you have a lot of fun adding color to your optical illusion artwork. And now, after you finish this, you can share it with your family. You also could create another work of optical illusions if you'd like to, and I'll show you another example. So this optical illusion was created by adding diagonal lines across a piece of paper. So you'll notice that the diagonal lines are different widths apart. There's larger open spaces. But I'd also like you to notice that those diagonal lines go all the way to the edge of the page. And it appears that they meet in the center. So the spaces in between these diagonal lines, you'll notice, have curved lines. And instead of changing to every other style, instead of changing, for example, from a curved line like a rainbow to a curved line like a smile, like we did in that first optical illusion, these all stay the same at the top. They're all curved lines like a rainbow. But then on the sides, the curved lines look more like stretched out backwards C's or stretched out forward facing C's. And then you'll notice at the bottom, they're more like curved lines like a smile. And again, you'll notice as the artist colored this, that the artist used heavier pressure to create a darker value on the outside and then lighter pressure in the center of each stripe, we'll call it. So I hope you've learned about optical illusions and you've enjoyed creating them in your artwork. I look forward to making art with you again soon.